following is a presentation of Main Street Media, your source for news, sports, and information on Main Street in Middle Tennessee. Welcome into Main Street Preps this week with your hosts Russell Venozzi and Tyler Palmatier as they cover sports all across the Midstate. Plenty to get into this week, reaction to the NFL draft, special guest, and more. Your headlines coming up next, but first we take you to our hosts, Tyler Palmatier and Russell Venozzi.
Welcome back into another episode. I'm Russell, joined as always by Tyler, and we've got a fun show lined up today. The order of events for the festivities are going to be us talking about the top headlines across the region. We're going to catch up with recently hired Brentwood Academy boys basketball coach Andy Blackston, and we will wrap the show looking ahead, as journalists do, to some Midstate football prospects that could wind up hearing their names in the NFL draft in the future. Tyler, you ready to get to it?
Yep, let's do it.
So speaking of the NFL draft, Tyler, that was one of the big headlines from this past week. Several Midstate guys got picked up in the draft or after the draft. And actually, if you read the article last week on MainStreetPreps.com, all 9 names mentioned there ended up getting an NFL opportunity. So that worked out pretty well. But the guys that were drafted include Alontae Taylor to the Saints in the 3rd round, Ty Chandler to the Vikings in the 5th round, Theo Jackson to the Titans in the 6th round, and then right after the draft, a bunch of guys were signed as undrafted free agents. TJ Carter went to the Rams. Obina Eze went to the Lions. Jordan Mason was scooped up by the 49ers. Javonte Payton was signed by the Cardinals. Master Teague went to the Bears, and Jordan Wilson was invited to Bengals rookie minicamp. So it was a pretty nice haul there for these 2022 NFL draft prospects from Nashville.
Yeah, really, when you look at one draft class, especially when I think all those guys were off the board or as undrafted free agents. Russell, did you say they were all scooped up by Sunday, by days in Sunday?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, most of these were done by Saturday night.
Pretty good.
So they were, yeah.
I mean, those guys are usually means that type of player is usually right on the cusp of getting in. So, some guys have to wait. Some guys have to talk it out for 3-4 days into the next week, which is stressful. So I'm sure, good for those guys that they didn't have to do it. But that's not a bad position to be in at all.
Yeah, and then, like I said, only one of them is a tryout player, Jordan Wilson. So definitely a good haul there. And, speaking of news, we've got plenty of basketball coach movement. We back in December and January, we kind of had the football coaching carousel, and we've got a little bit of that. Maybe to a lesser extent with basketball. Tyler, can you update us on some of the names that have been hired the last week or so? Yeah, well, I mean,
I guess the one that maybe surprises the most, the opening we didn't think that we were going to have this year was at Brentwood Academy boys basketball, and they've hired a Clarksville native and Lipscomb University product, Andy Blackston. That news came out last week, and that was, that was huge. We've had. As we've talked about, we've had John Pierce to the FRA boys basketball position. That's some more movement. It's just it was just a big week for all that to be happening, just sort of out of the blue. And it seems to always come on a Thursday. I don't know what the rhyme or reason is to that, but Thursday definitely does seem to be the day of choice for for when these movements are happening. But it's that time of season. I don't think we're done. I bet there'll be one more hire that'll surprise us or departure between now and the end of spring fling. Probably so.
And a couple others here were, of course, David Gallagher went to FRA last week. John, I think you said FRA a minute ago for John Pierce, but he's going from FRA to Nashville Christian.
FRA,
and then the Green Hill girls picked up former Good Pasture coach Joseph Simmons. And lastly here, there was a big track meet that happened out at Father Ryan last week, Tyler, and there was some big news that came out of that.
Yeah, Mensi Stiff breaking the discus state record, stood for 38 years before her, and then she broke her own shot put record later on in that evening. That's pretty wild to do both in the same night, but that's kind of the season that she's had. Got so good, an Ole Miss commit, and the way she's improved is just wild. I think she's really built for big things, and this is somebody who talks about the Olympics already, and the way she progresses, that wouldn't surprise me. The record that stood before not only stood for a long time, but was set by an eventual NCAA champion. So that was a big night for her.
Yeah, that's impressive. And if you want to read more about Mensi Stiff, you can head on over to mainstreetpreps.com. Tyler has a great story from last week, including a link to a TikTok video in which she went viral. So you'll have to check that out. But we're going to take a quick break and then come back with our coach interview with Brentwood Academy's Andy Blackston.
We've all heard the saying that a little can go a long way. This is especially true during the Big Payback's 24-hour online giving event, helping support hundreds of local nonprofit organizations. From 6 p.m. on May 4th through 6 p.m. May 5th, a gift of as little as $10 could be boosted by cash prizes and help to make a big difference in the life-changing work of local nonprofits. Learn more at thebigpayback.org.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA.
Nobody covers high school sports quite like Main Street Preps, bringing you hyper-local coverage of the teams and athletes in your backyard. Whether the Sumner County Sports Podcast with Zach Womble, Casey's Take on Sports with Dixon Post and Cheatham County Exchange sports reporter Casey Patrick, the MSP North Podcast with Brady McAtamney and Blaine Keller. They cover Montgomery and Robertson counties. To this one right here, Main Street Preps this week with Russell Venozzi and Tyler Palmatier with a macro view of prep sports in Middle Tennessee. Find the latest sports news from your Main Street at mainstreetpreps.com and find these podcasts dropping weekly on these Main Street media social platforms and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to a host of the show, Main Street Preps this week, Russell Venozzi and Tyler Palmatier.
All righty, it's time to welcome in newly minted Brentwood Academy coach Andy Blackston. Andy, how are you this morning?
Hey, doing great, guys. How are y'all doing?
Doing well. Thanks for joining us here, Andy. And of course, your move to Brentwood Academy became official last week. What excites you about that opportunity to come home to Nashville and to coach such a storied program?
Yeah, hey, lots that excites me about moving to BA. And the first one is, me and my wife, we're believers in Jesus. And, we're just always kind of asking him to open doors, shut doors, and lead us where we need to go because, we don't have much time on this earth. And so in comparison to eternity. So the first thing I would say is just we felt like the Lord was calling us there. And just trying to be obedient to him. And so that's the first thing. And then, you start to look into that situation and, hey, I'm really a Middle Tennessee guy. I grew up in Columbia, lived in Clarksville, played for Don Meyer for 5 years in Nashville, went back to Austin Peay for a graduate year with Dave Luce. And, so I've really, was in Middle Tennessee the first 23 years of my life. And, it wasn't until a job opened up down here in Huntsville that I was able to come down and then I went back to Austin Peay. So I know about Brentwood Academy, from the outside. and just how much I respect BA. And, I think the thing that attracted me probably to BA the most was their Christian mission. And because, I want to be a Christian who happens to coach, not a coach who happens to be a Christian. And so just to see their mission and their vision for that school, impacting lives for eternity. And then I love to try to do that through basketball, and just to see, their tradition in all their sports, but especially in basketball, 8 state championships and 3 McDonald's All-Americans, and just, came up there and played with my team 2 years ago, Madison Academy, just looking around and seeing all that. It's an appealing job.
Hey, Andy, I know this area is special to you, but you kind of ended up turning out a legendary career with Madison Academy in Alabama. Was it hard to leave?
Yeah, it's really bittersweet. I've been here 16 years, and have, to the best of my ability, I've always wanted to be more than a coach, I guess, because coaches get stereotyped, and so when I came in here and I started, just making interesting decisions, trying to be more than a coach, try to connect to the vision of the school, the mission of the school, the Christian mission, and then still being able to have successful basketball teams, and then connect with not only my players but my students across the school. So eventually I grew into the director of spiritual formation here the last 5 years, and I created a student spiritual formation team. And so, hey, I'm definitely a basketball coach, but I kind of try to see a bigger picture than just basketball. And that's kind of just my personal mission and vision. And I think it really lined up with kind of what they were looking for.
Andy, you've detailed kind of how much you moved around there early in your career, as most coaches do, and kind of how you saw different levels of basketball, including as the women's head coach at Austin Peay and the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Is there something about this kind of high level private school hoop scene that made you want to stick at that level for as long as you have?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've seen pretty much every level except for Division III and JUCO. But I've coached at the D2 level. I've coached at the Division I level as a head coach. I've coached at the high school level, and I would just say, I've tried to always take my teams to Nashville, to Lipscomb, to Belmont. I had Mr. Basketball here was Karan Johnson, and he came up and played at Belmont, and so we would always go up to Belmont and played Innsworth. I told Casey and Alexander, just, hey, give us the best, and because I wanted to play the best and to see where we were. And so yeah, and the natural, I've actually been watching BA's tournament games the last couple days, and man, what a great level of private school basketball, from the coaching to the talent. It's really, really good and really high level. And so, as a competitor, I want to get into that and see what we can do inside of that.
Andy, when you look back in terms of basketball, what were the most important lessons you took from Don Meyer at Lipscomb?
Oh, I don't know. You got 2 hours? We would need a long,
hey, we'll give you 10 minutes
session. I'll try to condense it, man. Coach Meyer was what I call a butt kicker, man. And so he gave me so many things, just being his point guard automatically, puts you on a whole nother level of responsibility and expectation in his mind. He had so many coaches clinics of coaches all around the nation and definitely Middle Tennessee. And he would, if he knew you wanted to be a coach, if I give you an example, this is a great story. My freshman year as a redshirt freshman, he redshirted everyone. And so we had a little Christmas break, and there was several days. And so he knew the guys that wanted to coach. So we all loaded up and we drove to Knoxville, Tennessee, and watched Pat Summitt. He was really good friends with Pat Summitt, and then we drove all night. We got to watch North Carolina practice the next day at 10, and then he got us into a Duke practice to watch Coach K. And so he would do stuff like that. Now, he was hard. He would push you. He was a farmer from Nebraska, and he translated that into basketball. And but, man, what great memories. Working camp. He had the largest camp in the nation, really, back then. And just the whole basketball experience there was really life-changing for my professional career. And so I felt like I came out of there. Now, one of the most fortunate things for me is to get out of that and as a coach maybe, and, go and pay attention to different programs and how other people do it. And I felt like I was able to do that through Coach Luce. I GA'd for Coach Luce, the long-time kind of legendary coach at Austin Peay. And then, I learned a lot from Lenny Acuff, who's the current Lipscomb coach. And so I got to be with Lenny for 2 years at UAH from Austin Peay. So just to be able to see different ways and realize there's a lot of different ways to win. And so sometimes the folks that come out of under the tutelage of like a Don Meyer, Bobby Knight, or different people like that, they are so committed to that one way. But you get out there and it's a big world and there's different ways. But there's principles that Coach Meyer taught me. And the number one thing is discipline and organization. And that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, it's amazing to see the influence that Don Meyer still has on basketball in the Nashville and really the whole southeastern area, just from all those camps and how many lives and coaches he touched. But looking back at Brentwood Academy here, Andy, of course, they won the four straight state championships from 2015 to 2018, 8 state titles overall. It's not a place that likes to settle for a whole lot less because they're in the mix every year there to win it all. Is that a challenge that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. And, you want to have high expectations and high goals. And obviously that's a place that's used to winning. That the 2003 to 2006 had a McDonald's All-American Brandon Wright. And then the last 4, had Darius Garland. So, it's a great place. You want to be in a place that has expectations. And, I think one of the things, and I told the folks at BA that one of the things that really, scared me was at first about the job as I was trying to decide, do I really want to go here, is, they had a really, really good year. And, they're making a change here and deciding to go a different direction with this program. And so, the more that you get into that situation, I do think that they're about more than winning. They're about changing lives and transforming lives of their students. And so that's something that really, really appeals to me. And that's why you coach. I mean, of course, I want to win championships. I've won my share of championships, and it's awesome. It's fun. It creates a lot of memories. But at some point, you want to make a difference in the people's lives that you're coaching and you're around, you work with. An eternal difference because our lives here are but a vapor. And so we've got to invest wisely in how we go about what we're doing.
Yeah, Andy, kind of speaking to what BA has done, they've taken 2 really good teams to the state finals back-to-back years and have left without a gold ball, which I think kind of speaks to I don't think speaks to anything that program's done. I think it's just winning championships, like winning the ultimate championship is very difficult. What's the hardest thing about winning a championship? You've won 5 of them.
Yeah, I won 5 at the high school level, and we won an OVC championship at Austin Peay. And I just think it's really hard, because the team with the best players doesn't always win, and the team with the worst players doesn't always lose. And so what matters is you're better than that team on that night. And then there's the human factor, there's just a lot that goes in. You got to stay healthy, and but I know this. At the end of the day, you have to have some really, really good players that are not only talented, they're skilled, they're disciplined. And probably the most important thing is there's not a moment that's really bigger. When I had, I was fortunate to coach Joshua Langford, who played at Michigan State. He was a McDonald's All-American. I was fortunate enough to coach Karan Johnson, who ended up being all OVC point guard for Belmont. And, when you're around players that are competitively great, what you kind of see is like, wow, there's not really a moment that's too big for those guys. And I think that's the important thing, because it spreads to the rest of the players, and they can kind of, relax and play their game. And so, yeah, but hey, we're going to go after it and see what happens.
Well, there's certainly no short supply of great players there at Brentwood Academy, Andy. So it looks like you've landed in a good spot, and we really appreciate your time today. We enjoyed getting to know you a little bit.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show. And, I'm excited. Me and my wife met at Lipscomb, and so we know the area very well up there. So it's not like we're going to some foreign land, So we're coming home in a sense, and so we're gonna give it our best shot.
Always great to come home. That has been new Brentwood Academy boys basketball coach Andy Blackston, and we are going to be back with more after this.
We've all heard the saying that a little can go a long way. This is especially true during the Big Payback's 24-hour online giving event, helping support hundreds of local nonprofit organizations. From 6 p.m. on May 4th through 6 p.m. May 5th, a gift of as little as $10 could be boosted by cash prizes and help to make a big difference in the life-changing work of local nonprofits. Learn more at thebigpayback.org.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes. That'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Tennessee, because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
Tune in weekdays at 2 p.m. Central for Main Street Sports Today with Chris, Mo, and JP as we talk about all things from preps to pros that relate to the Midstate and beyond. On this Wednesday, it's our weekly visit with Heather Williams, WCYB TV out of Bristol, talking a little NASCAR, plus the rundown of all the high school sports in the Midstate, the scores from yesterday, the schedule for today. It's all on Main Street Sports Today, weekdays, live at 2 p.m. right here on all of these Main Street media outlets. Back to Main Street Preps this week, your hosts, Russell and Tyler.
As any good journalist does, Tyler, we've got to look ahead to the future here. With the NFL draft already in the books, the 2022 NFL draft. As a draft junkie, I always like to look ahead and kind of see, who could be next. And so looking at the Nashville connections, there's plenty of guys right now in college football that are already producing that could very well be drafted next year or maybe the year after that. And I know a couple of them are from a program that you follow closely in Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, when I used to cover OU, it was a total offensive machine. And I do remember there's a lot to follow in recruiting, but I remember following along as, talk about guys like Key Lawrence. But why is it escaping me here?
Reggie Grimes, Woody Washington. There's been several.
Yeah, Reggie Grimes, Woody Washington. Those guys, have kind of weathered the storm of what happened at Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley leaving. But I don't think it's a very, it's not a bad thing. The staff overhaul with Brent Venables now, it's a kind of a lot of defensive heads. I mean, they're still probably going to be good on offense, but the staff, the defensive minds on staff, I think most people would tell you development and I don't know, just overall maybe experience. This is a better defensive staff now. That's going to benefit guys like Woody Washington, like Reggie Grimes, like Key Lawrence. You could even, so I think that those three could get their shot. I mean, they're in the right place, right? I mean, they're in a place that does crank out and have all the facilities and are able to turn people into NFL players. So those are three that kind of stood out to you and I as we were going through this, but I know there are several more.
Yeah. And imagining Oklahoma with a good defense paired with that offense is pretty exciting to think about. But you're right. There are some other guys that are at other schools that are already producing. I think, this year's freshman class, and I believe all these guys were true freshmen too, really stood out. A.D. Mitchell, of course, the Georgia wide receiver, he caught the go-ahead touchdown in the national championship game. Doesn't get much bigger than that. He had a great season when some of their guys went down. I believe George Pickens was out for quite a while at the receiver position, and Mitchell stepped up and became a key contributor right away. So I think whenever you do that as a freshman, you're already getting on that NFL radar. And another guy that kind of did the same thing was Junior Colson, Ravenwood, former Ravenwood linebacker now at Michigan. He was named to the freshman All-America team by at least a few different outlets there. So a great season for him, starting right there in the middle for Michigan. I should mention, I don't think I mentioned this, Tyler. A.D. Mitchell spent one season at Cane Ridge as a senior, and then took like a gap year or a gray shirt year, and then ended up at Georgia. So I think he's a year older than Colson. And then also Jake Brenningstool, another former Ravenwood product, went to Clemson, saw the field a little bit, caught a tight end, caught a touchdown as a tight end, and the reports in spring practice are that he's going to potentially take on a bigger role this year. So, with that frame that he's got and coming from Clemson in the powerhouse that they've been recently, you gotta like those odds to potentially get an NFL look in the future. And then, those are some of the guys that have produced. But then when you look at these 2022 and 2023 classes from the Nashville area, I mean, there's just tons of names that very well could pan out. We haven't seen them in college yet, but very well could. And from the senior class this year, Jordan James going to Oregon at running back. Got to think we'll hear from him at some point in time. Taylor Groves, East Robertson, going to Ole Miss. And we just saw with Alontae Taylor going to the Saints that these versatile defensive backs, which is what Taylor is going to be, you can really carve out a career and a pretty good draft capital there if you play well in the SEC. So that's a name to keep an eye on. Of course, the Wade twins at Summit, Keaton and Destin Wade, going to Kentucky. They already kind of look like NFL players at the high school level this past year. So
yeah, I was thinking about them earlier. They just kind of need to stay the course. They're almost like the early bloomers. They were so big. You're just they look so ready for college. But I guess when you're that large like them, I guess they just need to keep working. But I think they're kind of gym rats anyways. But for those listening, we are sort of just throwing shots in the dark here for the high school and the incoming college guys to the NFL. Russell, we're looking way ahead here. I can make a couple guesses, but it's pretty tough. But these are sort of, I don't know, maybe our best guesses. But having said that, if I had to have one great guess, I would put the Wades in there. If guys we covered this year who could go, that would be my guess. I mean, they were that impressive. But gotta keep working, gotta keep building. It's not an easy league to get into. But
you're right. If they just stay on that forward path, they should have tons of success there at Kentucky. And one other name on the way out is Isaiah Horton, receiver from Oakland going to Miami. That's a place that's produced a lot of receivers. And of course, we just saw this past class, a couple of receivers got picked up. So certainly a position of premium in the NFL. But that's looking way down the road. So we'll see how these guys do. And we'll certainly keep you updated anytime players sign or get signed anywhere. So be sure to visit mainstreetpreps.com for all that. And of course, all the latest news on spring sports playoffs and everything else. So we'll see you back here next time on Main Street Preps this week.
This has been Main Street Preps This Week with a macro view of prep sports all across the Midstate with your hosts Russell Venozzi and Tyler Palmatier. Visit MainStreetPreps.com for the latest news and information on preps in the Midstate, and find them on Twitter at MainStreetPreps.com. Main Street Preps This Week is a Main Street Media production.